Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. The Substance Abuse Advisory Council's Secretariat is cautioning members of the public on the need to be mindful of substance use and misuse, especially at this time. Noting the harmful consequences of substance abuse, members of the public are encouraged to minimize the use of narcotics. Jacques Wooding reports.
Concerns have arisen surrounding the likeliness of the coronavirus pandemic to push recreational drug and alcohol users into a more serious and potentially harmful substance use. Coordinator at the Substance Abuse Advisory Council Secretariat, Charmaine Hippolyte-Emmanuel, warns that the harmful consequences of substance use and misuse, including alcohol, pose harm both on one's physical and social health.
The Substance Abuse Advisory Council Secretariat advises the public on the need to be mindful of substance use and misuse, especially at this time. It is important to note that the harmful consequences are not experienced only by the users, but also their family and by extension the community. For this reason, persons are encouraged to be mindful of use so that exposure to smoking, alcohol consumption, and other substance use can be minimized and, if possible, eradicated.
Hippolyte-Emmanuel further underscored that exposure to substance abuse further places vulnerable groups in a more susceptible position, thus compromising their immune system.
Exposure to substance abuse further places vulnerable groups in a more susceptible position, thus compromising their immune system. While we understand that persons may feel bored or anxious, the department encourages persons to take this opportunity to bond with family and take greater measures to remain safe by following the hygiene guidelines. The use of 311 for additional support can be made, and services and other toll-free numbers being circulated on social media to be used.
She urged the public to remember the SAACS slogan, "Be bright and don't light," and be mindful that substance use and misuse will further complicate existing health situations. Jacques Wooding, Hot 7 News.
The St. Lucia National Trust on Thursday, the 7th of May, issued a written statement to its members and other interested persons responding to comments made by Prime Minister Alan Chastanet that the trust should be able to sustain its operations rather than be dependent on government subventions to take care of the organization's runnings. The trust stated that it is unfortunate that it has to constantly respond to accusations or misunderstanding via the media, and says the organization is readily available to iron out differences behind closed doors rather than in the public domain.
After comments made by Prime Minister Alan Chastanet suggesting that the St. Lucia National Trust should submit capital projects for funding as well as be more self-sustainable and less dependent on government subventions for daily operations, the St. Lucia National Trust put out this statement on Thursday, 7th May. Quote, "The historical purpose of the subvention is to help the trust fulfill the government-imposed mandate to protect St. Lucia's patrimony." End quote. It then goes on to question why any leader would shirk the responsibility or seek to destroy the agency created by the government for the purpose of protecting the patrimony of the country. Chairperson of the St. Lucia National Trust, Alison King, says while the COVID-19 situation has made it exceedingly difficult, the organization has been operating without government help.
Well, for the last several years, we've been coping without the benefit of receiving a subvention from government. We have continued to maintain sites that are in our care, using revenues that we generate primarily from Pigeon Island, and that's to maintain sites all over the island.
She explained that majority of the sites in the care of the trust are not revenue generating at this point. The organization has made it clear that from 2017, the trust has been submitting proposals for capital projects but have received no support.
We have submitted proposals to government to invest in projects, capital projects, as the Prime Minister indicated. And in fact, he had even in discussions had indicated that some of the proposals sounded promising and supportable, but none of these submissions have ever received budgetary support. So over the last 3 or so years, we have been submitting and have never received. So subvention stopped and no capital support.
The following are a few of the proposed capital projects submitted by the St. Lucia National Trust. 1. Development of a permanent stage at Pigeon Island. 2. The reinstating of groins at Pigeon Island to protect the beaches and coastline from erosion. 3. The creation of a light and sound show at Pigeon Island to create evening experiences for cruise and stay-over visitors. 4. Of the sewer system at Pigeon Island to the Beauséjour facility to help reduce pollution within Rodney Bay. And further develop the Walcott House experience and keep it open to the public. King also made it clear that the upkeep of the sites far exceed the subventions the organization has received.
In order to prepare a site to generate revenue, you have to invest in it. We don't have the resources to do that. We were told that our subvention, and by the way, the maintenance of sites comes at a significant cost to us, which in fact exceeds the value of the subvention that we were receiving several years ago. So we were already subsidizing it with revenue that we were generating through Pigeon Island, mainly entrance fees and use of the venue for mass crowd events.
The St. Lucia National Trust indicated that it is very unfortunate that the organization constantly finds itself responding to the Prime Minister's misrepresentations or misunderstandings via the media. The organization has stated that the trust is always readily available to engage in dialogue to resolve differences behind closed doors rather than dealing with them in the public domain. Reporting for Hot 7 News, I am Genevieve Gonzalez.
Mayor of Castries, Peterson Francis, has responded to the call made by the National Workers' Union to see a representative of the Ministry of Finance placed at the CCC to monitor how the government's subvention is spent. Francis went on to defend the move of the CCC to take up more economic responsibilities, given the poor financial standing he claimed to inherit with his chairmanship. Shaka Wooding has more.
Following an appeal by the National Workers' Union to the Minister of Local Government to see a representative of the Ministry of Finance assigned at the CCC to oversee the use of the annual $4 million government subvention, Castries Mayor Peterson Francis has issued the following statement on the matter.
I see a letter was sent to the minister and said, well, no problem. And then I'm seeing in that letter they're saying that the minister should appoint somebody from the Ministry of Finance to come and oversee the subvention. Now that we're talking about $4 million a year.
When pressed on the financial prudence of the CCC taking up the financial responsibility of the City Police Unit given their financial situation, the mayor defended this move, claiming it was a necessary initiative.
The need, there is that need, because the overall police force is burdened. They are looking island-wide, but could not patrol, could not do the I look at that as I said, city police as we see, to patrol the city. And the bad thing about it is that we have 4 constituencies. We have Castries East, we have Castries North, Castries Central, and Castries South. But so far, I believe, what I have done and the city council have done as far as city police is concerned, I'm sure that St. Lucians has appreciated greatly. So, yes, it costs us around $100,000 a month, but I believe that it is well used when it comes to what we have been able to do with the city police.
Mayor Francis remains adamant that layoffs are necessary, claiming several departments of the CCC are working short hours for large payments, costing the CCC upwards of $167,000 a fortnight in wages. Jacko Wooding, Hot 7 News.
The CCC, the Ministry of Health, and the Ministry of Equity collaborated to provide temporary shelter to some 67 homeless individuals in Castries. Earlier this week, Prime Minister Alan Shastney visited the VG Complex facility.
This is a really worthwhile endeavor, and it's important that we get it right. so that it would not only be for a crisis like a pandemic, which hopefully will never happen again in our lifetime, but you never know, but certainly even when we have hurricanes. Then the question becomes, who is homeless? So this idea that persons have family members and they should have somewhere to go, but if they're not going back to that family member's home and not staying there and staying on the streets, they're homeless. And you also then have persons who have a home but are so poor they can't afford to feed themselves. So should they be denied coming into a facility like this during this particular time? And I don't think they should be. I mean, I think that this facility should be open to get as many of the more vulnerable people in our society, particularly the ones that are struggling to help themselves, to be able to come there.
He also spoke on the importance of the National Meals Program to reach the most vulnerable in society.
So the goal of the feeding program is to continue to provide hot meals for the handicapped or the disabled persons in our community who cannot feed themselves, as well as the elderly people that cannot take care of themselves. But meanwhile, we're going to put packages together to give to the families of the more vulnerable in our society, in which they can cook for themselves. Now, one of the options that was discussed, that also came up in Parliament, was the idea of giving a food voucher. But I would say to you that if we gave a food voucher to many people, they would go to Massey or some other places and only buy foreign food. And so our farmers, who have lost their market to the tourism sector here right now, we want to make sure that we can link up with them. So the goal is to buy as much fresh produce from our farmers and distribute that to the more vulnerable. So it's a win-win situation.
That was Prime Minister Alan Chasney. As he assessed the financial situation at the CCC, Castries Mayor Peterson Francis placed the onus of the CCC's extensive wage bill on the failure of an agreement signed between the CCC and the National Workers' Union. Francis says the layoff of workers remains a possibility. However, contrary to popular belief, he says no workers have been laid off to date.
Mayor of Castries, Peterson Francis, says though the layoff of workers is still within the best interests of the CCC. As of May 6, 2020, no workers have been laid off. Francis strongly believes had a previously signed agreement with the National Workers' Union been instated at the agreed-upon time, the CCC would be in a better position to meet the wages of workers. However, given that the agreement was not realized, the CCC continues to tally an $8 million wage bill, large percentages of which, he says, are resultant of mass overtime payment.
In trying to hold on to these staff, that the last collective agreement that we signed in the National Workers' Union, in that agreement has what we try to implement, a 40-hour week. Because we have spent a lot of money on overtime between Saturday and Sunday. Because we are essential service, so we have to work Saturday, Sundays. Okay? We have, for argument's sake, we have a night crew. Because when you have all during the day, we still have to have a night crew. So that has compounded with the situation. We signed that agreement.
The mayor says he understands the position of the union in defending the best interests of employees. However, he says he must do the same for the CCC, more so in light of major reductions in revenue collection.
So I understand the union, understand their work, understand they have to show that they are fighting for their workers, but at the same time, I have to protect my own interests in the sense of the interest of the CCC. Because it's making no sense to have people working and you can't pay them. It is worse. So we have an excellent relationship.
Discussions are currently underway with the intervention of the government ministries to determine a way forward for the CCC in hopes to satisfy the concerns raised by all stakeholders. Jacka Wooding, Hot 7 News.
This is the Hot 7 TV Nightly News. Stay with us. There's more coming up after the break.